Hey Marcos, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for coming onto the podcast. I appreciate it. Um, I you and I had never met until I watched the Golf Channel piece about Urban Golf Club, your organization, and I was just really fascinated by the story and by you, and so we connected and I asked you to come onto the podcast. So I guess the first question I'd ask you is what was it like being kind of featured or interviewed for that piece? Like what effect has it had on you?
Well, I'll tell you what. I've been working at the country club since I was 15 years old,
Hmm.
and I always knew. Well, in the first year, I was actually rookie of the year, um, and actually, I shared it with another caddy, and we've had a rivalry ever since. But from the beginning, I was like, this is a place for me, right? And so coming into the U.S. Open and being featured, um, it never really. It was like, okay, yeah, for sure, this is gonna happen. I always had in my mind, you know, the idea of creating an organization behind it
Hmm.
started in college as I was in my business major, and I was like, yeah, this is obviously what's going to happen. I've been caddying at the country club since I was 15. I'm in business school now. I'm going to start a business teaching kids golf. It was just, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to get a lot of attention because when I start telling people about this, it's just going to, snowball from there because nobody's doing what I'm doing. People
Hmm.
ask me about, oh, how are you different from the first tee? And first tee doesn't have financial literacy as a part of their program,
Hmm.
and I don't and I definitely come with a different approach to kids. Yeah, they have games, interactive stuff, but I'm really like going down to the basics where I'm going into these community centers and they're playing basketball already, and what am I going to do? Tell them to hit 50 balls until they get it right? Just cold turkey? Like, no, and that's not going to happen. So,
Right.
from the very beginning, ever since I started the idea, I knew it was going to pick up. I knew I was going to get some attention for it, and so the Golf Channel, the experience was. I mean, I was at the country club in my home course, Ponkapog, that I grew up playing, and where they interviewed my parents. And then I went over. So it was kind of like a normal day. It's like probably the day I would want. Um, pretty much a normal day. You know what I mean? Like that's how it felt. It was just a
Right.
camera in my face, which is
I
fun.
got you. Okay, well that helps me, right? So you weren't doesn't sound like you were nervous at all. It sounds like, and I get that. I can relate to a lot of what you said there. I think we have a lot of similarities in the sense in a lot of different ways, but I think when you're so invested in what you're doing and you've had this vision for so long, it's not intimidating, right? Like exactly who you are and what you're doing, and so right then you just have that camera in your face. It's almost like if I'm podcasting or someone interviews me, it's like I'm not nervous. This is just who I am and what I've become, and
Exactly.
I think what's so fascinating is your optimism, right? Like I could hear you say, like, "Hey, I've never doubted the fact that this is going to get recognized."
Yeah, I mean, it's. I just knew I was in my own lane, my own.
Hmm.
Very. It's my own niche, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, and it kind of surprised me that nobody's really gone after it the way I am, and it's just
Hmm.
because it's these kids that I try to introduce golf to. They have their preconceived notions
Sure.
and stuff like that, and I would say a lot of the time, the average country club pro won't know how to approach a kid that's
Right.
never really had that um, in front of them before. So it's like I'm not like I said, I'm not of course I'm not afraid. Like at the end of the day, I was one of these rugrats. You know what I mean? Like I was the kid. I was playing golf when they were playing basketball now, but
Right.
I was still didn't want to hear no other nothing. I didn't want to hear. I didn't. This is
Hmm.
what I like. So like leave me alone. Let me shoot my hoop. I mean, shoot
Mhm.
my ball into the hoop and stuff like that. So it's really just about making sure that the kids understand that you're not gonna you're not trying to take basketball away from them.
Mhm.
You're not trying to, you're giving them. I introduced golf as a tool more than anything.
Right.
Like
Right.
golf, it's not even about being the best at it. Of course, you always want to get better, and it's a never ending process of getting better in terms of golf.
Mhm.
No matter where you start. But it's I get these kids looking towards the future more than anything. And golf is very generational, and I
Mhm.
mean just naturally.
Right. It's handed down.
Exactly. Um, so introducing kids to golf for the first time, and stopping pretty much their entire life, which is on the basketball court. I interact. I put together routines where I put basketball and golf together.
Yeah, I love
Um,
that.
so they would hit a golf ball down the court and then pick up a basketball at half court, shoot a layup, make a shot, and then go back and forth. And as they do that, I would adjust their swings as they go.
Yeah, and I think you just said it, there, and I think you even said it in the piece. Like the way I think of it, right? And it's sort of similar to what I do when working with kids is you kind of meet them where they're at, right? Like you could try to force them to hit a golf ball 50 times the right way, but they don't relate to that. It's
No,
boring. Maybe I'm not having fun, right? If
exactly.
you can kind of combine those worlds and make it real for them, like
Right.
it's they can relate to it, then all of a sudden you got a chance to make a connection. And that's one of the biggest things I took out of the piece as well is you said something to the effect of I don't want to be talking at them, right? I want to, I understand where they're coming from. And that's huge, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, sports are great. We all want to be good at sports. I think, people who like sports want to get better at it. Some of us want to be professionals, and that's a really hard thing to do. But what we do get out of sports is learning, right?
Yep.
Which is what you're doing, right? You're introducing them to a new way of thinking and a new challenge that they wouldn't have had otherwise. Then it starts to sort of bring into the conversation some of the principles, the values of Urban Golf Club, which we'll get
Right.
into. But
Uh huh.
I guess I wanted to ask you, since we talk about golf being passed down, did your parents play golf?
Well, my mother later tried it herself. Bought a couple lessons for herself,
Sure.
and then she had brought us out to the driving range, and I was hitting a few. My other brothers were hitting a few, and it just stuck on me. And ever since then, my mother really never picked up a club again. But obviously, I took it and ran with it.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean, it just fell on my lap. You know what I mean? And I'm a, you know, just a 9-year-old kid. You know, willing to do whatever my parents
Right.
give me. Right. So, um, and the thing is about if I don't know if I don't know what would happen if I got it later, like in my teens.
Right.
Because that's because a lot of these kids, like I said, they have their minds made up at when they get to their teenage years.
Sure. Absolutely.
They
Right.
know
They
what they
figure out what
like.
they like and they don't like.
Exactly. And the thing is, they don't even know that they don't like golf. They just don't like
Right.
watching it.
Right.
It's really the only perspective that they have is if they're flipping through on a Sunday and they see, oh, these guys playing golf again. But they don't know what they don't know. They won't know until they try it.
Well, I think there's a couple things in there. One, you talk a little bit about, right? There's not a lot of people of color in golf. It's mostly
Right.
older white men, right? So it's hard to relate. Plus, when you live in a place that doesn't have like a fancy golf course, like
Hmm.
it's totally off the radar. But I think regardless of the color of your skin or where you come from, like when you're in your teenage years, 15, 16, 17, it's not it's becomes about one, how do I get to spend my time? If I really like to play basketball, and that's my favorite thing, like why am I going to give up time playing
Hmm.
basketball or to be with my friends or to be with my girlfriend or whatever it is I do work
Right.
to go play golf, which is expensive, right? Why am I going to give up that time? And two, it's hard. A lot of kids don't want to do people don't like to do things that are hard because they're going to fail at it and it makes
Hmm.
them feel like crap. And golf is the ultimate, like, the ultimate, in a humbling games. I started
Exactly.
playing at 30 and I was so terrible. And I was always a good athlete, but I could not play golf for the life of me. And it would be so easy to just be like, forget this, I'm going to quit.
Exactly.
To take on that challenge when you're 15, 16 years old and like be okay with failing that's not the easiest thing in the world
Right.
to do.
And the thing that's why I incorporate something as simple as basketball, for that positive reinforcement. That's really what it's
That's
all
a good point.
so they'll whiff at it, and I'll keep telling them to, like, go, just keep going. You swing, if you miss, blah blah blah. If they do that a couple times out and they decide to like run after they whiff, I'll grab them. Hey, we're gonna hit this ball regardless. You're not gonna be out here whiffing for 30 minutes. So yeah, using something simple like basketball, or even running up and down the court, grabbing the ball and passing it to their buddy, and
Right.
whoever gets to the end of the line first wins, whatever.
Yeah. It's
And
fun.
exactly, so it's definitely, I get doing push-ups too. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, so golf sucks at the end of the day.
It can.
Golf is the worst. Is the worst. It has the worst learning curve
It's really
ever.
hard.
You know what I mean? It's just like, just today. You know what I mean? I just started just swinging. My friend said, "Don't play golf swing. Play golf." You understand that?
Yeah.
Like, so, and that's another thing. I'll keep paralleling golf and basketball all day, but I want kids to treat a golf swing like I want a kid to have as many swing thoughts as they do like layup thoughts. You know what I mean? How much thought is going into a layup? How much thought is going into a 3-pointer with 3 seconds on the clock? You know what I mean? And the thing is about golf, it's like 3 seconds are always on the clock. Like,
Yeah.
every shot is just as important as the last one. Like you don't have a lot of time to make up. You know what I mean? I think,
It's such a mental game. It
and
is.
yeah,
It's interesting because one of the influences I had in getting into sports psychology is I used to read these books by a guy named Dr. Bob Rotella, who writes golf, like books about the mental game of golf.
right,
There's a whole series of them, and I started reading them. I'd never really played golf, but I was like, I played a little bit, but I was like learning about the thought process. And one of the things he always said, and I still think about it today. I still use it, and it related to my work, is like, you have to put the same low level of importance on every shot, right? If you try to like change the way you're thinking about the shot, they're all the same theoretically, but the pressure is different when the situations are different. So how
right,
do you like just go up and hit the ball the same way every time, regardless of what's going on around you? And that's a life lesson, right? Like, it kind of comes
exactly,
back to the values of your organization: patience, humility, accountability,
exactly.
right? At the end of the day, right? Like, every shot matters, and you've got to put the same level of intensity into it and the same focus, and understand that when the ball goes into the woods, you got to play it where it lies, right? And you can't let that get you down, because if you do, you're not going to last on the golf course.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, the golf, the parallels between golf and life are,
Yes,
it's just, you know, they're there.
absolutely.
They can't be ignored. And every time you walk on a golf course, the golf demands it. If you're gonna end up quitting halfway through, if not the third of the way through, if you don't hold on to uh your patience, your humility, and account. If you don't
Yeah,
have those, it's like night and day playing golf with or without them.
it sure
Um,
is.
and
Yeah.
so that's kind of what I push on the kids. And that, honestly, I'm just now getting into it myself.
So, but I'm curious, like, so how do those values come out in the sessions with the classes with the kids that you're working with? Like, how do they respond to those ideas of
Mhm.
patience, humility, and accountability? Like, what's the typical reaction? Do they get it, or do they sort of resist it, or somewhere in between?
Well, they understand. I mean, I make it very clear. Like, if you don't have these three things, first of all, we a lot of the time I define them first. So I ask kids,
Right.
oh, anybody know what
Know what this
humility
means.
is? Anybody know what
Yeah.
patience or accountability is?
Yeah.
And I kind of have them guess, hey, what do you need? What do you think you need to do something well eventually? If you're really trying to get better at it, what does that take? Right.
Mhm.
So first, first off, get them I get that into their head. Like you're not going to be good at this automatically.
Yep.
You're going to be bad at it. I'm going to tell you you're trash if you try to tell me that I can do it. You know what I mean? I'll have no problem telling a kid that you're bad. And the thing is they're always looking for the instant gratification.
Yes, they are.
You know what I mean? And golf is everything but that. And they get it
Mhm.
immediately. After their first swings, they get it. It's just if they're willing to do it again and
That's
again
right.
and again
Yeah.
and again.
Right. To endure that torture until you actually get to the point where you actually swing the club pretty well and it goes relatively straight.
At
It
least, or
takes
in
a
the
while. It
air,
takes a while
or
in the
at
air.
the very least.
Yeah.
Um, but it's like I said, it's one of the most difficult learning curves to manage in sports.
Yeah.
And I like to say people like to say, oh, it's a battle against yourself. Yeah, it is, but I feel like you're real. Like if somebody were playing defense on you,
Mhm.
it's I tell these guys like, hey, yeah, you don't have a person trying to block your tee shot, but at the end of the day, there's a bunker right there, right? Like,
Mhm.
yeah, like the golf course is your defender.
Right. Well, and that's you're absolutely right. And to me, the way I think of it is I think it's I think it's your mind, right?
Yeah,
Like when I think about playing golf, one of the things, like just as an example, the bunker is one thing, but like for me, like if I have a tee shot over water, doesn't matter, right? Like you still just have to hit the ball the same way because if you hit it well, it's going to go over the water and you're going to be fine. But as soon
exactly.
as I see the water, there's this like mental block, like, oh, I have to get it over the water. So what do I
Right,
end up doing? I hit it right into the water, right? Like you have to get to a place where you can block out all of those distractions because you can't do anything about what's in front of you. And you have to really just focus in and be okay with, hey, I'm going to put my best swing on this and see what happens. And
exactly.
that's life, right? Like in life, there's sometimes we go out and give our best, you know,
Right,
and things don't go the way we want them to. What are we going to do? We're going to throw our club, we're going to snap it over our knee, or we're going to just walk up to the ball and hit it again to try to get back into the fairway.
right.
That's life, you
So
know, and
it's
I
like,
think you said it really well.
and it's like, so I play a little bit of basketball myself, of course. But I can dunk the basketball, right? And people say, oh, oh, you dunk well when there's nobody on you, and I'm like, yeah, for sure. Like you dunk well when there's nobody trying to block you. I'm like, yeah, no doubt about it, every time. Um, but so when I say you have the golf course playing defense on you, it's like you want to treat every shot like you're Russell Westbrook, like.
Yeah.
Like you don't want like if somebody's trying to jump in front of you or if the bunker's right there, you're gonna drive,
Right.
through it.
You're going to
You're gonna,
attack it rather
you're gonna drive
than,
through it.
yeah. Right.
Um,
Exactly.
and so I'm really just thinking. I really just thought of that just now. But,
But
but
it's a good analogy, right? You want to
exactly.
attack, right? Always want to be attacking because that's in your control, right? Regardless of whether there's somebody between you and the basket or there's a bunker between you and the green or whatever it is, right? Like you got to go after it with the same intensity every time because
100%.
that's what you control. That's your attitude, right?
Exactly.
So I want to ask you, so like I know you've had this idea. It sounds like you've had this idea for a long time. So, like, when exactly did you develop the vision? Was it in college? Is that what I heard you say before?
Yeah. So it was about sophomore year in college. I was like, okay, I'm in this business degree, and what the hell am I gonna do with it? And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
why wouldn't I start a business? And then I was like, oh yeah, I kind of took like a hiatus from golf my freshman year of college. I was like, oh yeah, I like golf, don't I? That's really how it came on. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, okay. I did some first tee stuff when I was in high school.
Mhm.
So it's kind of it was just a no brainer.
Mhm.
And that's pretty much just it's been blind. I've had the blinders on ever since.
Mhm.
And but as for the financial literacy portion, which is really like the kicker, that's come into form the last year and a half because I just figured it can't be just golf. Um,
Mhm.
there needs to be you know, an educational component to my organization. And
Mhm.
golf teaches you a lot, but it doesn't teach you how to survive,
Yeah.
really. And I figured, financial literacy is pretty much just be growing up as a caddy. Like, what else am I listening to for 4 hours, 5 hours straight? People talking about millions of dollars
Yeah, well, given where
and
you caddy, yeah.
putting their yeah, exactly, and buying another house or whatever it may be. Like,
Yeah,
so of course, financial literacy and golf, they walk hand in hand, and I just figured,
sure.
of course,
Yeah,
it had to be it.
I think I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I mean, the truth of the matter is there's always a need for more financial literacy, and it's not just for young people; it's for a
Well, of
lot of
course. Oh my God.
adults too, right? So it's a very important topic, and it seems to align pretty well. So, you had the vision, you had a very like you had tunnel vision about doing this, and obviously it's evolving. But I know there was a point where you started to get some help
Yep.
implementing structure and
Mhm.
you got some fundraising. Can you tell me about like that, how that came to be?
Yeah. So uh, there was a caddy member tournament back in
Mm-hmm.
2019, and I met my now lawyer, Ned Corcoran.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as he heard about what I was doing, he instantly kind of jumped to the opportunity to like get my paperwork done right away, as
Yep.
soon as possible. So my 501c3 got done with him, and once that happened, he has his own network. Of course, he's a member at the country club, and he
Sure.
started telling people about it, and I was caddying, and so I would continue to talk to people about it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it had some buzz around the club and so forth. So last November we had our first like cocktail fundraiser at the golf course next door,
Mm-hmm.
um, and we raised about 10 grand there.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, and we bought the laptop I'm talking to you on right now.
Yep, right.
um,
An essential running a business. You don't have a
exactly.
computer, you don't have a business, basically.
We bought this nice little printer. Actually, we bought a book. We bought some books. We bought a book, but a bunch of them. Um, Ever heard of that right there? Maybe it's backwards, but
Oh wow, yeah, Booker T. Washington, Up from Slavery. Yeah.
yeah. So it's kind of like it's a story about a guy who was born a slave and got through it and traveled the world in the turn of the 19th century, like
Uh huh.
or the turn of
What made you what about that book? Like what inspired you to buy that book?
oh, it's like telling people to like this guy had it way worse.
Yep. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Um, and today, things start to get a little you know trivial, and not as they take people. All right, so people take things a little bit too seriously these days, and this is kind of a wake up call. Like
Mhm.
to have a book called Up from Slavery. Like, what is it
Mhm.
like? Where at the turn of the 19th century, talking about, oh, it was my hard work that got me through, not my race, blah blah blah. You know what I mean? He was conceived from rape from his slave master and his mother.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
just this
it puts things in perspective.
But the thing is, the crazy but what it's his name has been sabotaged over the years though, and that's kind of why I'm kind of bringing him back in the forefront to I hope kids understand what he was about, because he was an industrialist. He created the Tuskegee Institute,
Hmm.
um, with by hand pretty much, or using the first students built the school itself, and
Wow. I don't
and
know that
it was an
story.
industrial school that just he taught kids how to use their hands, um, and it was just it's the most probably my favorite, definitely my favorite uh, black person in American history, or black. You call him an activist. He's more of just the man, really.
Yeah, well, listen, I think it's important to have. I mean, I appreciate that. I mean, obviously, I know of Booker T. Washington. I've never read the book, but I want to read it now. But yeah, I think it's important to have those types of, call them role models, right? Like they're
Yeah,
from a different era, but like to have people to look at and have it to have that perspective of like, hey, like things are really hard for real. Like at one
right.
point in the world, and for these people to endure those hardships and then come out the other end and still be known 300 years later, 200 years later,
Right.
and have all these accomplishments that are attached to their name, and whether the people, what their views on them are, the people are going to have their opinions about everything. Unfortunately,
Of
they
course.
just do,
Of
right?
course.
But it's impossible to deny the story that you've just told about a man who endured probably the most, heinous sort of thing that you could go through as a person to come through it, and then also like build something from scratch, after
Exactly.
having gone through that. That's inspirational, and it's hard to deny whether or not you have a positive or negative opinion about what the person did. And for me, one of the books that's very similar to that, it's different context, but it's called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, which is similar. It was about his journey through the Holocaust and
Okay.
how he survived the Holocaust. And it was always that same theme of, if I could get through this,
Yep.
then I could do anything. Right. And that was the meaning. He found meaning in the struggle. And like that book just, sings to me, because it's like the things that we go through in this life today are just, they really are trivial. I'll use
Yeah.
your word, right? Like we all have problems, but it's our
Exactly.
perception of the problems that is really the issue. It's not the problems themselves.
Yep. That's 100%
Right?
right.
Okay, it's not that big of a deal. I'm free. I have a life. I can earn money and have a family. It's like we'll figure it out. Versus like having that self pity or that depression or despair. Like I can't get out of this. So I
100%.
appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
it's a great guy.
yeah. So, tell me more about Ned, because he was only in a short part of the clip, but I just found him to be really endearing in the sense that like you could just tell the fondness that he has for you as a person. It was really, it was touching because you could tell that he really cares about you and he believes in what you're doing. So, can you just talk about that relationship a little bit more?
I mean, it's been great. Ned has just been very helpful along the way. I mean, at the end of the day, he's anything legally, like that's the guy. Like
Mhm.
he's actually, from what I hear, a relatively well known lawyer in the area, and of course I can't imagine him getting any complaints. Uh, but he's just been great, reaching out to his friends
Mhm.
and the membership, and actually he has a connection with NBC
Gotcha.
Sports,
Gotcha.
which was very helpful, and he was actually a part of the diversity committee for the U.S. Open also. So
Very
we
interesting.
yeah, so we got to go to this nice little charity event on Thursday night. Um, and Ned didn't speak. I think he's the financial chair, and he himself with the chair. His name's Macy Russell.
Mhm.
Um, they did this little internship program for kids all around the country. To come from their colleges and stay on site, and do learn about the golf industry. So they had about 27 kids, out of maybe 300 applicants, and they did a great job with that. So Ned has always looked out, and he's done a lot of work with the first no, not the first tee, but the boys and girls clubs
Gotcha.
in the area too. So he understands like what needs to be done, how we allocate the money, and things of that nature. I still need an accountant, but um, he's definitely knows where the money should go to, make sure we get the best out of it, or the most out of it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's really important to have those kinds of resources around you. In terms of understanding that what's really necessary to effectively run a business, because just in that minute or two in that response, right? Like you've got legal, you've got accounting, you've got day to day operations, you've got
Yeah,
fundraising, you've got right, you got all those things, and you're the guy doing it all mostly, right? But
yeah,
you can't do everything on your own, right? You need to find good people that can help you. And it sounds like, having somebody like that in your corner, not only to help you with the legal side of it or the financial side of it, but somebody who really believes in what you're doing and is, a supporter, right? A mentor, or somebody who really wants to help you get to where you want to go. Because it's
hmm
really hard to do things like this by yourself.
no, I
Like
mean
as
it's
much as as much as you believe in what you're doing, I'm sure there are days where it's like, man, this is really hard. And I know it sounds like you have a full-time job, right? So you're
yeah.
running the not-for-profit, and you're doing a full-time job, and you're caddying. Like you got a lot
No,
on your
actually,
plate.
I just caddy.
Oh, okay.
What the plan is, hopefully I caddy through the season, and then once the colder months come along, I'll will I believe by then we should have enough money for where I can uh do this full time
Full-time.
until
Awesome.
the next caddy season.
That's great.
So that's
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 great.
that's the goal. We'll see what happens in 6 months, 6, 7, 8 months.
So is getting to that level of funding, is that just a matter of continuing to fundraise?
Yeah, but we have it. It's just how everything's gonna get split up.
Gotcha. Okay.
How much, how long is it gonna be? Is it gonna be 4 5 4? Is it gonna be 5 months? Is it gonna be six
Mhm.
months? Is it gonna be 4 months? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So we're just trying to figure out the logistics, and we'll have that uh probably we'll figure out before the summer.
Yeah. Are your parents involved at all in running the
No,
not-for-profit?
they're not
Okay.
involved so much. But I do owe my mom $70 for feeding the kids that we brought to the open. Yeah, so that's about it.
So it's a very small role, but an important one. You
Yes,
got to keep
yes,
them. You
yes,
got to keep them fed.
exactly. But my mom
so
didn't want to pay for it, but she's all right.
So at this point, right? Like obviously the urban golf club is moving forward. You're growing. You've got funding. This is going to become for you personally a full time venture in the very near future. So what's the long term goal for all this? Like, what do you want this to become down the road?
Um, well, I would love our own space, of
Okay.
course. Whether that's like an indoor facility with classrooms and simulators and putting greens and things like that. Really like have a couple levels to it, whatever it may be. Like it's gonna be just a golf facility
Hmm.
in the inner cities of Boston, right? And hopefully we can have another place one day. I'd love to venture out to even New York or Chicago one of these days, right?
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah. So and take it as far as we can, especially in the north, where golf isn't year round.
Yep.
That's kind of like where it like matters most. Detroit, places like that. And um just be nationwide. And shit, I'll go to London and help those guys out. You know what I mean, if I can.
Yeah.
Um, but ultimately, I'd love to, just really show. I kind of want to show people how it's done. You know what I mean? Like,
I do.
because at the end of the day, it's not being done well, in my opinion. Um, so of course, the kids are, number one priority, but if we're talking longer, I want my own, course. I would, if whether it's close by or it's hard to get land anywhere in
Mhm.
Massachusetts like that anyway. But or if it's something that I can figure out in the Midwest and take kids there
Yeah.
for a couple weeks out of the summer or whatever it may be, or have some type of retreat there for anybody who would like to come and support the kids. Because I would, anything that I would do, like in terms of course, I'm a nonprofit organization. Every piece, every penny is getting reinvested. Um, and what I want to do, because I do some golf course design myself.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I've do I have one second? Can I?
Yeah. You got sketches?
Yeah. So I don't know how you're gonna see this,
Yeah, it's tough.
but it's very like geometric. I don't know if you can see it,
It's a little easier there.
but I want to design my own golf course in the Midwest somewhere. I'm crazy, right? And my lawyer would agree. So on a couple occasions, I didn't use any business funds or anything like that, but I took it upon myself to fly to Wyoming and try to reach out to Kanye at his ranch.
How'd that work out?
I mean, I got to just couple nice conversations with the security,
Okay, gotta start somewhere.
and that's really like how I kind of got inspired to design those things. I was like, if there was a golf course at Kanye's place, what would it look like? And so it's just a bunch of shaped bunkers, like triangle bunkers, rhombus bunkers, whatever it may be. Like,
Okay, all right. That helps me picture the visual a little bit better than trying
yeah,
to see the
like
sketch you had.
legit rectangle greens and triangular greens,
It's
things
a
like that.
super interesting idea, man.
Yeah, I'll even I'll figure it out. I'll let you see them. But yeah. So I was just like, he has a flat, because you can only do stuff like that on flat land, and it's like very flat over there. I kind of wanted, it was like, oh, just trying to check out the topography of the blah blah blah, because I'm a golf course
Mhm.
designer. And I lied, of course. I'm not a registered golf course designer, but it sounds cool. But yeah, I'm very inspired by people like that. I hold uh, Kanye. I hold Kanye to a modern day Booker T. Washington in a way.
I, I think what I hear in your voice is just somebody is truly an entrepreneur, right? Like you've got a ton of ideas. You know they're good ideas, right? Because it's working, right? What you're doing is working. You understand there's a need for the services that you provide to the community, and it's working, right? And so, yeah, it's only natural to look at other people who are highly successful and have taken a lot of risk and tried a lot of different things to look at them and hold them in high esteem. And I do too, right? Like it's not it's easy to criticize, it's hard to go out and do. And you're
Exactly.
going out and doing, like you're like, I'm gonna do this, whatever it takes, I'm gonna do it. And like I respect that because I know how
Appreciate
hard it
that.
can be to try to do things from scratch on your own,
Yeah.
with no clue where it's gonna no clue where it's gonna end up. It takes a lot of faith.
Thank you. And I got stood up by like Tiger Woods' right hand lady for coffee once. She didn't stand me up, but she was like, "Oh, we're doing this project. We can't do coffee anymore." So I mean, I'll always reach out. The thing is, I'll stick my
You
neck
have
out.
to.
I'll stick my neck out
You
exactly,
got to.
especially for something that's I believe in as much as this. It's just I figured who would say no if they have the right type of money and of course heart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And you don't know if they're going to say no until you ask the question. Right.
Exactly.
And so for what you're doing, you've got to be okay with being rejected.
Oh my
Like, I
gosh.
got to ask the question. It's important to me. I think I have a good idea. I think they'll like it. If they don't like it, that's their problem. I'll move on to the next person
Mhm.
because, I have to have thick skin. And that's very unique, in terms
Appreciate
of
that.
being able to do that. But when you believe in something, which, I feel the same way about what I do, is when you believe in something, you just keep going, right? Like, that was something I took out of the interview, right? Like, your father, I think, was the one who said, "You're stubborn as heck." Do you think that's a fair characterization?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he would know better than anyone. I got it from him. So
Hey, it works in your favor a lot of times. Sometimes it
sure,
works against us, but when you're trying to do something important, being stubborn and going forward and not stopping until you've seen it through is really not an easy thing to do, and it's admirable.
I appreciate that. And it's just so. What else am I gonna do at this point? At this point, there's nothing else for me to do but to put the pedal to the metal
Yep,
just you know kick doors down.
yep. So I guess as I say, we'll wrap up here.
Yeah.
Um, I usually ask the same question at the end of all of my podcast interviews, and sometimes it takes a different shape depending on who
Okay.
I'm talking to. And I was trying to think about how I would ask you the question, but I guess the way I would frame it is if you had to give one piece of advice to somebody who wanted to chase their vision, chase their dream, right? Someone who wants to be an entrepreneur,
hmm
what would that piece of advice be?
Um. Well, it's kind of two things, right?
Okay.
Make sure that you're doing it better or working harder than anybody else at it, whatever it may
Hmm.
be, or make sure that you're the only person doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
so that's if you're in a field that you want to be successful in and you're not, getting at it every day, 1% every day type of thing, or in some cases if you want real results, you'll dedicate a lot more than that every day.
Hmm.
Um, but 1% every day, that goes that goes a long time. That goes, that's 3 months. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
If you're really working at something, and then, um, yeah, and if you're in your own lane, you just kind of just put your head down and keep
Yeah.
going, and don't
Yep.
and where not even you want to work as hard as the person trying to do it better than everybody else, but sometimes I'm not saying nothing here came easy, but it came naturally, right? Nothing that I'm doing now has come easy, but it definitely it's definitely like a natural feeling, like
I love that. And I really relate to that, right? Like, when you believe in something, right? It's not easy. I get that, right? Because every days can be hard when things aren't going the way we want them to.
hmm
But it's natural in the sense that, like, you believe in it, right? It's part of you, right? It
exactly.
always makes sense, it's and I think that that's really important, right? So I think it kind of speaks to, if you're going to start a venture, whatever it is that you believe, you have to believe in it, right? You don't just start a business because you think you can make money and you start a business. You do it because you believe in it. And eventually the success will come because you believe in it and you're willing to put in the effort and
Hmm.
the time and the energy into it being successful, which is basically what you've described.
Yeah, 100%. And it's just for me, it was always like 5 years ago. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be a part of this open one way or another. Like, oh, it's just like 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I'm in the caddy yard saying this shit,
Yeah,
and
you're good.
it's like this kid's crazy. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Or what I say, like, oh, it's just a matter of time. Like I've been saying that for a long time. It's just a matter of time. But yeah, I mean, I'm blessed to be where I am now, and we're just getting started, and I'm excited to see what's gonna happen next because I just know that it's only I'm only gonna get more. I'm only gonna get more attention as long as I keep running around the city or cities eventually.
It's only a matter of time. I have no doubt that you are going to achieve whatever it is that you set your mind to. It sounds like you've already checked a lot of those boxes, but there's
Exactly.
so much more to come. So I can't wait to see how things go for you. I'll
Appreciate that.
definitely be paying attention. So thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming on to the podcast. It was great talking to you again,
No
Marcos,
problem.
and
Thank you, Michael.
you're welcome.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks.